What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to Me and You, the podcast. Today's episode, I want to talk about my upbringing, my relationship with God, and how that's affected the season that I'm in and my healing journey. So, I have my little journal with me that I'm going to read from just so I can really give you guys my real thoughts. So, okay, so just a little backstory. We weren't the most church going family growing up. We went more so on holidays, but there was a short term in my life, I want to say in elementary school, where we were going every single Sunday. At that time in my life, I had a very vague and limited understanding of God. Basically, you do good things, you go to heaven, you do bad things, you live a life of sin, you go to hell, and God punishes you. And for the majority of my life, that was my relationship and my dynamic and my understanding of God and who He is and the role that He plays in your life. He's there to correct you, keep you on track, punishment, reward. There was a point in my life where I was extremely depressed and I battled a lot of demons. I did not want to be alive at points. I was very angry. I was sad. Um, I was experiencing a lot in a short amount of time. And this was on and off from about 13 to 21. Within that time, I never 100% lost my relationship or my belief in God, but it was very rocky. I always knew to pray and call on God in times of need, but I don't think I had a solid enough relationship or foundation and that constant line of communication open to know that I can talk to God through the good and the bad and the ugly. I think I would really only beg and plead for some sort of relief or mercy when things were getting really bad for me, but I also didn't have that connection to where I was able to listen and receive what God was telling me. And maybe I would have been able to hear that the season serves a purpose, that there's a reason behind everything. I was very closed off. I was literally just begging and pleading for my life at those times. Now, because I went through so much and I didn't have that relationship with God, I developed the belief that I was being punished and that I clearly must have done something horribly wrong to deserve all that I was enduring. I just want to give you guys a little bit of insight so you can better understand. When I was growing up and when we were going to church on a consistent basis, I did not go to children's school. I was sitting in regular adult church with my parents. So when you're in elementary school, first of all, I have really bad ADHD. I already can't pay attention in general. But when you're reading like scripture from the book, right over my head. I have no idea what is going on. I don't understand these concepts. It was catered to a more mature audience. So, really, the few things that I could catch on to or that did stick with me only reinforced the idea of the punishment and reward system. You do good, God's on your side. You do bad, straight to hell you go. So, it's not a fault of anybody. I can't blame anybody for that. I clearly missed the whole message. I was a child. So that's kind of just where my mindset was. And I have to say, that has been the hardest thing for me to rewire and let go of, because once my relationship got really rocky, I just sat there and thought back to my childhood. I'm like, damn, like I really, really must have done something, because why is this happening? Why is this my life? All I know is what I've just been saying about my relationship with God, and I'm relating it to my life right now, and it's in shambles. I was confused. I was hurt. I felt led astray. I felt betrayed and extremely confused because I couldn't wrap my mind around what I could have done to be experiencing what I was. Nothing ever crossed my mind that it was just life, that this is what you have to go through, that this is a part of the process, that everyone has to go through that. That never once crossed my mind. I was just very jaded and I thought that I had done something horribly wrong. We're going to put a pin in that and circle back. For those of you who don't know, I have been dancing since I was 4 years old, and I grew up being a competitive dancer. Being a competitive dancer, and even in my professional career now, it is very easy to develop a perfectionist mindset. Everything needs to be in tip-top shape. Competitive dancer, the goal is to win. In my professional career now, you want to be booked and you are up against every other dancer in the room. Show up, show out, be your best at all times. So you take my perfectionist mindset, combine that with my very ignorant and limited understanding with God, you sprinkle in my abandonment issues. It didn't leave me much room to feel safe making mistakes. For those of you who don't really know about abandonment issues, it is a fixed mindset that if I do something bad or if I do something wrong, I'm going to be left or I'm going to be rejected. So really it's just reiterating that idea that if I'm not a good person, then I'm not worthy enough to receive blessings, compliments, love, my desires, my manifestations, the promises from God, anything. If I mess up, cut, cancel, delete, you're not getting anything. You messed up, you're on punishment, you don't get it, you're left, you're rejected, gone, bye. As I mentioned in episode 1, I have a really hard time surrendering into my healing journey, connecting with my higher self and with God. 1, because of my control issues, but 2, because I convinced myself that if I play by the rules of this handbook that I've created on healing, then 1, it'll be over as fast as possible. 2, I won't get punished because I have followed the rules. And 3, I won't get hurt. I have lived so much of my life in fear. I was tired. I have been through so much. I did not find my voice until college, halfway through college at that, probably like 22. So that's towards the end. I just recently stepped into speaking up for myself and speaking from a place of power and knowingness. I was bullied. I was made fun of. I have been in abusive relationships. I have had terrible, toxic friendships. I'm worn out. I was so tired of being hurt and feeling like I was just a terrible person and that I had done something to deserve all that was happening to me. The abandonment issues were taking over, that fear of being alone, the fear of just being a terrible person was so debilitating. I tried to stay within this confinement of 2 little lanes so that I don't step on anybody's toes, so I don't get hurt. I don't want to be punished. Like, I shot myself in the foot from the beginning, trying to play perfect, trying to play by these rules. It's inevitable. It is inevitable. I'm not saying I deserved anything that I went through. I don't hold that over my head. We can talk about that later. But I know that it served a purpose. It has created my story. It has created who I am. It is a part of my narrative and it is a part of me, and I own it wholeheartedly. But prior to the knowledge that I have now, I just wanted to do anything and everything that I could to make sure that I never experience any harm, anything bad. And I just thought, if I'm perfect, can't nothing happen to me because I'm not doing nothing. So for damn sure, nothing can happen to me. It really wasn't until a few weeks ago that I realized I have never given myself grace for being human. I realized that I give grace to everyone but me. And naturally, I believe that if I didn't allow myself grace and understanding, then I assumed that there was no way God would. I know in my brain that that isn't true, but it's like I have PTSD from everything that I've experienced. It's like, in your brain that something isn't true, but there's a disconnect between your brain and your heart and the rest of your body to truly feel the truth, to have that knowingness flow through you head to toe. I have really spent a lifetime trying to be perfect in every sense of the matter, that I have robbed myself of the opportunity to experience love, grace, forgiveness, understanding, but most importantly, a clean slate, an opportunity to fall and pick myself up and, dust yourself off and try again, try again. You feel me? Just the natural way of life, learning your lessons the way a human being would learn their lessons, trials and tribulations, messing up and starting over. And not even just messing up and making mistakes. I mean, messing up, starting over, getting up and not having anything weighing over your head, not having any judgment, not feeling like you're a terrible person, really looking at the situation, be like, okay, maybe I could have gone about that a different way, and just executing it and living your life without something dangling over your head, like just haunting you. Truly, waking up, it's a fresh day, a new perspective, a new mindset. The past is the past. We're going to go down this one, and it is okay. That's something I never gave myself until recently. I've had to really sit with myself and dissect all of the times that I've allowed myself to believe that I'm only worthy of my dreams, desires, success, love, etc. to come into fruition so long as I'm perfect and I don't make any mistakes. Obviously, I've been through a lot in my life and I've been able to process and let go of those experiences, but I didn't realize how much anger and resentment that I was holding on to towards God for allowing me to go through everything. I was so hurt and so mad. And again, remember this false relationship that I have developed with God that was built off of this punishment and reward system. I've really convinced myself that I was a failure because of everything that I've gone through and because of that ignorant mindset that I had with God, that if you're a good person, you're rewarded, and if you're a bad person, you're punished. Like, what else was I supposed to believe based off of the knowledge that I had for myself? I remember when all of this clicked, and it was earlier this month. I was at my parents' house. I was journaling before bed, and I ended up journaling about my abandonment issues. I went back to reread what I wrote, and I looked at it and I was like, do I have abandonment issues with God? Like that this is how I would describe my relationship with God. And it's like everything was revealed to me all at once, that I have taken my worldly traumas and I have associated those emotions and those feelings with my connection with God. And then from that point, I had to backtrack. That's when I was able to think about what was my upbringing, what was my initial introduction to God? Where does this show up in my spiritual life? Where does this show up in my day to day life, my childhood, dance, everything? Like everything made sense. I had to literally dissect all of those situations and rewire my thought process on everything. Like I have had to deconstruct and rebuild with my relationship with God and develop a relationship where I feel safe to truly come as I am, whether that's in frustration, confusion, anger, happiness. Like to know in my heart that I am allowed to mess up as many times as it takes for me to learn my lesson, and to know that I have not lost an ounce of worthiness and I have not failed, and I'm allowed to heal and process and unpack what I'm going through and sit with that in the ways that I'm called to do so, and know that being perfect was never on the to-do list. That was never an expectation of me from anyone, but especially from God. I had to really humble myself in that moment and apologize to not only God, but to myself, and meet myself with the love and forgiveness that I was so desperately craving. I realized that it takes both of us, it takes me and God in order to make things happen. And I had to swallow my pride and realize that God was always forgiving me. God was always looking out for me. He always had his hand on me. And I was the only one holding myself hostage to the mistakes that I had made. That night, and I'll never forget it, February 5th, was the most life-changing night for me. And it was so pivotal in my healing journey and my understanding of life and who I am and how to move forward. I've never been more grateful than I am right now to have an understanding of God's grace and his mercy. I'm still working on it. I still have my blockages and certain mindsets that I need to overcome at times, but that extra layer of cushion, knowing that I am forgiven, loved, valued, and perfect through my imperfections, brings me so much peace in a way that I haven't been able to experience yet. Since my little epiphany, an affirmation I make sure to tell myself throughout. I learn my lessons through love and grace. And that just serves as a little reminder to me that I have not done anything to be punished, that God is not looking down on me with a finger pointing at me, telling me that I have messed up, that I am a failure, that I am wrong, that I know that I will go through lessons, that I will encounter times in my life that I'm not fond of. I'll go through hardships, heartbreak, good days, bad days, but I have not lost an ounce of my worthiness or my value. So even now, as I'm working on rewiring my brain and redeveloping my relationship with God, I give myself grace and I give myself mercy because I know that I'm not going to snap my fingers one day and it's going to be a process. And I also know that God has an understanding of that and that He's working with me and that He still loves me. Remember that we're human. Remember that we're always going to encounter hardship in this life just as much as we are going to encounter the good, and both hold value. And you are valuable in both. I am by no means perfect, and there are times when I find myself slipping into old mindsets, questioning, doubting, having my insecurities. But I make sure that I catch myself in that moment and I forgive myself immediately. I'm not going to feel embarrassed. I'm not going to allow myself to feel guilty for what I've experienced or for making a mistake or for not knowing better. Having a connection and a relationship with God and your higher self means that when you make a mistake, all you can do is take accountability, learn from your mistakes, and show up better the next day, because when you know better, you do better. And that's exactly what I'm doing now. Knowing God, trusting God, having a relationship with God, and the same thing with yourself does not mean that you are exempt from having to encounter lessons, life lessons, mistakes, hardship, heartache, whatever. You will experience that. But do know that every single time you will be met with love, grace, understanding, and open arms at the finish line, no matter what. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you were able to take something from this and from my story, and I will see you in the next one. Mwah.